Hi, I'm Tom Volpe from Volpe Woodworks. I'm excited to show off my latest project. Of course, it's a keepsake box using my signature design. Back in 2018, my first YouTube video, novice veneer user project number one, making a small box. I'll put the link up above. Watch it sometime when you can't fall asleep. The purpose of this video, though, is to show you how to use raw wood veneers and perhaps to inspire you to use veneers in an upcoming woodworking project. In this video, I go into detail showing you the techniques I use to create the box and then to bond veneers onto it. Something I think is unique to my box is the use of a 90-degree kerf cut hinge. I showed a lot of that in the video. And then finally, how I apply a top coat finish. I'm happy to answer any questions about any of the details you see in the box, and you can send me an email or at tom@volpewoodworks.com or put in the comment section down below. Thank you for watching. For my project, I decided to use a wood I've had my eye on for a while. It's a bundle of Shedua, S-H-E-D-U-A, Vonkel, or Mozambique is another name for it. I like this particular bundle because it has a gorgeous underlying block model figure, those vivid dark black lines, and then the goldish brown color. I think it's going to complement well with the accent veneer I chose, in this case bloodwood. I've used bloodwood for several of my projects for the accent. It seems to blend well with a lot of the tawny brown colors. And then for the main visual interest is oak burl. I chose this particular oak burl. It reminds me a lot of, to me it reminds me of leather. Also the scale of the cluster size works well for this size box. I don't think the cluster size is any larger than a 1/2 inch. This looks like a large size piece of oak burl, but I'm only going to harvest such a small piece out of it. But there's a lot of problems with this particular piece. So out of this piece of cardboard, I cut a 5.5 inch squares to help me visualize or block out the areas of the best looking part of this sheet. Here I'm trying to balance the cluster pattern to where I think it's most visually appealing. You're marking it out with some chalk and overspray it with some alcohol to best pop the grain figure and such, the cluster pattern. To me, I think I picked made an excellent choice with this. Just a quick review of the materials used to make this project. Veneer covered MDF plywood, some 1/2 inch plywood, cabinet grade. Here's some cut off pieces I'm going to use as the cawls or platens. Some corner clamps. Some F-body clamps, several of those actually. The adhesive I use is any brand PVA, but I like Type-On 2. Some accurate measuring devices, in this case this is a combination square and a square. Some safety razor blades. You're going to probably best to have more than 10 to 15 of them. They do tend to wear out pretty quickly and they're cheap. And then some various grades of sandpaper. I'm reviewing how I lay up the veneers for the inside of the box. Here I'm demonstrating the platen. Here I have a piece of plywood with wax paper covering it, and the other one is another sheet of plywood with melanin. This will keep the any glue squeezed through from sticking to the surface. I've already laid out on the substrate itself. These are going to be the pieces that the box is actually constructed of. How many the pieces I need to harvest from each board. In this case, my box is 7 inches by 7 inches by 4 inches tall. So here I have clearly designated a couple sections that are 7 inches long, making sure that my veneer is marked so that I know how to orient the veneer onto the substrate, which is the glue side, which is going to be the face side or the side you see. And I'm just going through making sure that my platen is large enough to accommodate the glue up I'm trying to get. Now that I know that I have the veneers adequately marked, in this case these are going to be the pieces for the inside, I'm using the safety razor blade to make a couple light passes to sever the wood fibers. I want to cut them roughly a little bit larger than I need for accommodating the actual size or the height of the box. And the reason for that is the veneers are rather fragile, so if you can kind of cut them roughly down to size, your risk of causing some damage while handling them is greatly reduced. Here I got both the left, or in this case, both pieces are going to be cut to size. Now it's time to spread the adhesive. Because I do this a lot, I've invested in a ink brayer. It really does make spreading the adhesive a whole lot easier. Ink brayer is just a luxury that I enjoy, but your fingers work perfectly fine, or a piece of cardboard, anything to act as a squeegee to spread the adhesive out evenly. My rule of thumb is pretend you're painting with the adhesive. That way you get a nice even coat. Also, you want to ensure that you don't trap any stray sawdust, paint, any contaminants that could actually be between the veneer and the adhesive. You really would not be able to recover from that. It acts as it telegraphs to the surface. Here I'm using a piece of scrap plywood to force the dry veneer to come in contact with the liquid adhesive. This way you don't have any bonding failures. You don't have to do this part here, but I'm going to lift the veneer up and show you what I'm trying to accomplish. You'll see that the veneer has 100% coverage with the adhesive. Not all veneer is flat. Burls are notorious for having wrinkles and blistering and bubbles and such. Quarter sawn veneers like this are typically pretty flat, so you don't have that much of a problem. But the purpose is obviously to make sure that the veneer does come in contact with the liquid adhesive. You're making sure I did it on both sides. Blue painter's tape. The adhesive is essentially very slippery. Whenever you apply pressure, you'll find that the veneer actually can slip out of place. And if you're not monitoring it adequately, you can find out an hour later after your layup that the veneer dried inappropriately and you got a messed up panel. So in this case, the blue painter's tape works perfectly fine. It doesn't leave any residue. Now it's time to put everything into the into the clamps. You can see I have a pile of clamps laying there ahead of time. If you've watched any of my other videos, you'll and also email me, you know that I stress clamping pressure. Adequate clamping pressure is necessary for ensuring that you have a flat veneer panel. I wouldn't even open up the bottle of adhesive until I know exactly where my clamps are going to go. The fact that I have them. Here I'm spreading them roughly between 6 and 8 inches apart. That should be that supplies enough clamping pressure to ensure that the veneer is, when it fully cures, the adhesive fully cures, the veneer is not wrinkled or buckled. Type on the PVA adhesive. They typically take about 60 minutes to come up with their, not full strength, but adequate strength for holding a veneer in place. So I just set this panel aside and let it dry. Here I'm making sure that I got it as tight as it can get, ensuring that. It is up to you to read, understand, and follow the manufacturer's safety rules with your power tools. I encourage you to use eye and hearing protection when working in the wood shop. Maximum length of any one side of my box is 7 inches, so the top and bottom pieces are going to be cut just slightly proud of the surface, or the width of the side, so roughly about 7 1/8. I got the fence set, the table saw, the height of the blade set. We're going to make a piece for the top and the bottom, and again, like I said, they're going to be somewhat, they are square. That's 7 16, 17, 7 1/8. This is a maple veneered MDF plywood that I buy from a local supplier. Now we have the top and bottom of the box pieces cut out. I'm going to bond a veneer to the inside of the lid. So when you open it up, you see veneer on the sides as well as the inside of the lid. Here I've already marked off a 7-inch section I can harvest from this larger sheet of veneer. Using a new safety razor blade, I'm going to sever the wood fibers with a few light passes. Like we did for the side or the inside veneer pieces, I'll spread a nice even coat of Type Bond 2 using my brayer to roll it out nice and even. Just want to make sure that you have 100% coverage. And repeating like I did with the inside pieces, using a piece of plywood to force the veneer, the dry side of the veneer, into the wet adhesive surface. That way you have to make sure that you get a good bond. Again, you don't have to do this particular piece, but I'm just showing you what I'm trying to accomplish with that. Make sure that you can see that it covered 100% of the underside of the veneer. The veneer was actually just a little bit undersized, and so I'm scraping off a little of the excess glue. That's going to be hidden by the thickness of the side of the box. My platen, in this case, is covered with packing tape so that any glue squeeze out is not going to actually stick to it. See that pile of clamps there? I already know exactly what I'm going to be accomplishing. I'm going to essentially locate those clamps around there and apply adequate clamping pressure. This little piece of extra piece of wood in there is to make sure that as the platens are pressed down, it doesn't act as a fulcrum and then lift up on one side. So you want essentially a 100% downward pressure. I used to collect antique tools years ago, hence my eBay name, Thin Wood and Old Tools. Here is part of that collection of tools that I had is these antique double screw arm clamps. I have a whole pile of these. Well, it's been about 90 minutes, and now it's time to take the top platen off. See how well I did, and just removing the clamps. My basement's a little cool this time of year, so the adhesive is just didn't fully cure. Usually 60 minutes is about the average minimum time you want to allow things to be under clamps, but 90 minutes is more than adequate. And removing the top platen. Looks pretty good to me. Nothing's lifted, nothing wrinkled, doesn't appear anything seems to be a problem. Everything looks to be stuck down nice and flat. Just a minimum minimum amount of bleed through. And use the safety razor blade here on that small section there. That's where the bleed through is. Because the veneer or the adhesive is actually still relatively soft, it actually peels off or shaves off quite easily. You can see it taking off a nice fine shaving. And there's a couple other areas that have a little bit of a bleed through that's not obviously seen on the video. You want to get the adhesive off the surface because that definitely could affect the adhesion or the finish that you're going to apply. And that blue painter's tape, it's pretty durable. You want to make sure that you get it off. It's actually strong enough that it actually could possibly pull some of the fibers out of the veneer, so you want to be careful of that as well. And since the adhesive is still relatively soft, now's the time to actually clean up any squeeze out on the edges. The overall dimensions of the box is going to be 7 inches by 7 by 4. Here I've adjusted my table saw to where the pieces, I'm ripping the width of the side pieces to just slightly over 4 inches, cutting off the excess, and flipping them around after readjusting the fence to right at 4 inches and get a nice clean edge on both sides. Most commercial veneers come from the factory pretty much smooth on the surface. There may be some few shallow scratches here and there, so I've started off my practice with sanding as I use worn 150, 180 grip sandpaper. I knocked off the really sharp edges on it, so not introducing any new scratches that weren't into the veneer already. And I sped the video up because, like anybody else, I don't care to watch anybody sand veneer at any of their woodworking projects, but I just wanted to show you that it is necessary, just like any other solid wood project. You have to prepare the surface for a finish. Here I'm just knocking off the edges, make sure there's no loose splinters. And I'm going to repeat the process on the other one, readjusting my paper. Your hand is very good. You can really feel if there's any bumps that you trapped any foreign debris underneath, but for the most part, you should have took care of that on the glue up phase. To clean the sawdust out of the pores of the wood, I like to use a petroleum distillant called naphtha. It does a really good job of cleaning the excess sawdust that's accumulated in the pores, and plus it doesn't evaporate as fast as alcohol. It does a fantastic job of showing off the figure of the wood itself. Well, look how gorgeous that is. This video is a little long in the tooth, so we're going to continue on in the construction process of it in part 2.